Hi everyone, can you see me? Can you guess where I am? Well, if you guessed under the shade cloth, you are right. Welcome to the Sunset May Garden Tour. We're in the middle of a second round of heat wave here in May. It's a beautiful evening in the garden, my favorite time to be out here. I'm going to show you around, harvest a little along the way, and at the end, we're going to have a beautiful sunset together. Let's go. Well, first and most obvious is that the hill behind me is covered in shade cloth. When the temperature reaches 85 or over, most vegetables don't do well. So I put some shade cloth to try and protect the cool weather vegetables from the heat and also to protect some of my new seedlings. So what I'm using here is a 60% shade cloth. I'm also using a 40% shade cloth. I just pulled out everything I had, even some old sheets and old sheer curtains. So use whatever you can for shade cloth once the temperatures get hot. Well, in spite of my best efforts, a lot of the nasturtiums dried up in the heat. So I had to pull a lot of them out that were in here. But the cool thing is, we're getting ready for summer. So I was able to plant some of my warm weather vegetables. So I've got some cucumbers from my cucumber seed collection, some Boston pickling, some Space Master, some poinsettia, and a couple other varieties right along this adorable little black trellis. And in the middle here, I had a little bit of space, so I went ahead and planted some lettuce, which I actually think is just coming up. Now, lettuce is a cool weather vegetable. It likes temperatures of 75 degrees and under. I just planted it about 4 days ago, and look, there's already little seedlings coming up. Because a good strategy for planting lettuce in the hot weather is to plant it in the shade of other vegetables. So the cucumbers here will climb up this trellis and shade the lettuce during the hot summer. I know we have a lot of new gardeners here with us growing for the very first time this year. So let me just show you what happens to lettuce when the weather gets hot. Here is some black seeded Simpson from my lettuce seed collection. And once the weather gets warm, lettuce shoots up a tall stalk from the middle. It's called bolting. Once lettuce starts to bolt, the leaves turn bitter and it's really not much good for eating. But you can leave it in, it will bolt, it will flower. The bees love the flowers, and then once the flowers dry, you can then collect the seeds and plant them again next time. Now let me just show you what's happening to my peas right here that are climbing up this ladder mesh trellis. Peas like the cool weather, 75 degrees or under. And you can see here, it's been way over 75 degrees, and look what's happening to the peas. They're starting to dry and starting to die from the bottom up. So they're drying, they're turning yellow. We're even getting some of this powdery mildew on the leaves. And if you see that on your peas, don't be too worried. It's just a normal response to the heat. So these will be pulled out within the next couple of weeks. The shade cloth did help extend their lives as long as I possibly could. There's only so much you can do in 95 or 100 degree temps. I planted one of the watermelon from my watermelon seed collection. As I pull the peas out, this watermelon is going to start to climb, and I'm going to train it to go over this trellis. It's going to look so pretty with little baby watermelons hanging down. And I believe this is the sugar baby watermelon from my melon seed collection. Now let me just talk a little bit about this trellis. You guys are going to see these throughout my garden. This is called a Laddermesh Trellis. This is a piece of ladder mesh, it's called, and I found mine at Home Depot. I put two pieces together, and to make about a 10-foot trellis arch here over my garden bed, attach the two pieces of ladder mesh together with a cable tie at the top. And I have a video if you want to know how to make it. It's super easy and super inexpensive. I'm kind of sad because the poppies are starting to die off in the heat. Poppies are a cool weather flower and they really don't like the hot weather. So I'm going to enjoy them as long as I can. There's so many pretty colors here. There's some pinks, there's some reds right on the other side that I'll show you in just a moment. So I covered them with shade cloth, but you can see they're starting to get some heat damage here on the edges. They probably won't last much more than a week or two. Growing up the other side of this ladder mesh trellis are some beautiful purple potted peas. I think these just look so pretty. These are actually in a little bit better shape than the peas I just showed you. So we'll definitely be harvesting these over the next couple of days. So if you're looking for a quick growing, easy crop, as long as it's cool where you live, definitely get some peas planted. Better cover up the poppies so they don't get too hot. Now this is not the prettiest area in my garden right now, but I wanted to show it to you anyway. So what I'm planning on doing here is pulling out the tomato cages, enriching the soil, and planting a little herb garden here. And I'll definitely bring you along for the process. It's going to be really fun to have herbs because this is right outside my kitchen door. My garden right now is a work in progress, especially at the top of the hill here. And what I plan to do here is plant some greens. Doesn't get a lot of sun here, so I thought it would be a really good spot for greens over the summer. Let me know what you think too. Now in this little garden bed right here, gets almost no sun. So I put some wildflowers in here that are really work well in a shady spot. Planted them from seed. And let me see if there's any little seedlings coming up. Oh wow, this might be one right here. So come on back down the hill with me and I'll show you what else I've been working on. So I've been really trying to get my tomatoes planted, and because I knew it was going to be such a hot week this week, I left some of the other peas in that are actually on their way out, so it provided a little bit of shade to my new tomato seedlings. So in this tomato cage here, and this is one of my DIY tomato cages that I've been using in my garden probably for about 5 years now, I planted a Chef's Choice green tomato. It's an All-America Selections winner, so I'm really excited to have an actual green tomato, which it'll be green when it's ripe, but it's a super productive tomato. It's very healthy. It's already starting to get blossoms, so I definitely didn't want the blossoms to die off in the heat. And the peas are providing it with some nice little shady spots so it can get good and established here. And of course the shade cloth is really helping out a lot too. Now down on the next Laddermesh Trellis here, there's a tomato growing that's actually been growing over the winter time. I've been keeping it trimmed and pruned up. This is the small red cherry tomato, and it is actually looking really, really good. I trimmed off a lot of the cold damage it got, producing some little tomatoes, starting to climb up this trellis. I think it's going to be really pretty, seeing the tomatoes hang down from the trellis on this one too. If you've been following my videos for a while, you know that I always say plant backups. Not being sure that this tomato plant would make it, since it grew all winter long, I thought it might die off soon. At the bottom of the trellis here, I planted a cantaloupe from my melon seed collection. I believe this is the Honey Rock Cantaloupe. That way if I lose the tomato plant, I'll have cantaloupe as a backup to trail up this trellis and up over the top. And even if the tomato plant makes it, we'll make room for the cantaloupe as well. Now you all know how much I love the nasturtiums, and it really is hard for me that we're getting this early heat wave because they're already starting to die out. Usually they last well into May. So you can see that in spite of the shade cloth, they're definitely drying up. I've pulled lots of them out already. And I did pull some out in here to make room in this garden bed for some more cucumbers. And these are all from my cucumber seed collection. One that I'm really excited about growing is the lemon cucumber. It's a beautiful, tasty cucumber shaped like a lemon. So I planted several along here to grow up this trellis, and I think it's gonna look so pretty. Now, one thing that you wanna do when you plant cucumbers is plant them every couple of weeks. I've got some transplants in here. I also planted some seeds along the base of the trellis. So that way I have cucumbers to harvest at different stages throughout the growing season. A good strategy when you're planting your seedlings is to cover them with shade cloth for a couple of days. That way it just helps them get good and established and helps them get used to the sun. The cucumbers are holding up very, very well to the heat. And the peppers, you can see they're getting a tiny little bit of, whoops, this leaf just fell off. A tiny little bit of sunburn, and it looks like they're getting eaten by something. So this definitely needs some neem oil. Some peppermint oil also will help repel the bugs. Now, a lot of you said you did want me to grow some watermelon up over this beautiful garden arch here. So I actually have already planted a couple right along in here, but I am going to be doing a video on how to grow watermelon vertically over the next couple of weeks. But here we have the Sugar Baby watermelon from the Melon Seed Collection, which is a small compact variety and works very well for growing vertically. So grab a Melon Seed Collection and grow along with me. Now, along my fence here, I planted wildflowers a couple of years ago, and they always reseed year after year. A lot of the cool weather flowers like the nasturtiums are starting to die off, but once those die off, the warm weather wildflowers will take their place. And I'm also going to be popping some sunflowers in very soon. So if you have a spot like this along your fence, or a spot that's really hard to get to, throw down some wildflower seeds. I have them in my Bring on the Pollinators warm season flower collection, and they'll grow, provide your hill or your area with some cover, and also bring in the pollinators as well. So you can see here on the Smart Pots deck, I have everything covered with shade cloth to protect it from the heat. But I do want to take a peek underneath this shade cloth here at the strawberry crate tower, because I think I have a couple strawberries that are ready to harvest. Now, strawberries don't do too well in temperatures over 85 degrees, so shade cloth is really a must. Oh, look here. Ooh, wow, do these look pretty? The shade cloth is really protecting it. They're ripening up very nicely in spite of the heat. I think I'm going to go ahead and pick these now. This one is not quite ripe, so I'm going to leave this one. You can tell strawberries are ripe when they're completely red, even at the top here, but I went ahead and picked this one in spite of the whiteness at the top because it is starting to get a little bit mushy from the heat. So I'm going to go ahead and cover up the strawberry crate tower. Now once the temperatures drop down below 85 degrees, which they are supposed to do next week, the strawberry plant should start flowering and producing once again. A little while back we posted a video on 3 vegetables you can grow when you can't get out to the grocery store. One of the easiest vegetables were the category of greens. So we planted some arugula and some lettuce. Well, arugula is very heat sensitive, and you can see here the arugula is starting to bolt. And again, what that means is it shoots up tall stalks from the middle of the plant and it starts to flower. So I'm not too worried about protecting this from shade right now because the bees absolutely love the arugula flowers, and once they dry up, it'll drop seeds or I can collect the seed for the next planting. But in the middle here, I have a beautiful marigold, which actually helps repel pests. Now this is called a big duck marigold. It's an All-America Selections variety, not covered at all in the heat, and it is absolutely blooming like crazy. Now if it's cool enough where you live, you can grow arugula and lettuce. It likes temperatures under 75 degrees, but you always want to have some heat-tolerant greens in your back pocket. And on that same video, we also planted some kale and some chard from my heat-tolerant greens collection. These are beautiful varieties. This is the red Russian kale, and I absolutely love the beautiful purple reddish stems. Aren't those pretty? Super tasty in a salad, sauteed on scrambled eggs. And here's the blue Scotch curled kale, another lovely variety. And in the middle, it's kind of getting shaded out a little bit by the kale, is a beautiful red chard from the heat tolerant green seed collection. Look at those beautiful, lovely red stems. And as you can see, these greens are growing very well in a container. This is the Cali 5-gallon fabric smart pots. Now beans are one of the easiest vegetables you can grow, especially if you grow it with kids. They're gonna love having their own little container of beans. They're a warm weather vegetable, but they still don't like temperatures over 85 degrees. These are all from my bean seed collection. There's even some flowers. So the shade cloth is really doing its work to protect the bean plants. Flowers mean that beans aren't far away. Oh, and look, here's a little baby bean developing. Now here I have an 8-foot Smart Pots long raised bed, and I've got some dill growing in here. Dill is a cool weather herb, likes temperatures of 75 degrees or under, but the shade cloth is really doing its work. It's not even drying up, it's actually still growing in spite of the heat. And the lettuce is being protected by the shade cloth. It's not looking wilted at all. And one of my favorite greens is this beautiful red vein sorrel. It's a perennial here in California. Absolutely beautiful. The great thing about sorrel is you can cut it off at the base, like when it starts looking a little bit dry or brown, or if you've just used it all up, cut it off at the base and it will grow back and produce some more greens for you. Now here we have a garden arch made out of 2 cattle panel trellises. And a couple of weeks ago, these nasturtiums were absolutely beautiful, brilliant with color, but you can see how the heat is really taking them out. So over the next couple weeks, I'll be pulling these out and planting some runner beans in its place. Although there's already quite a few beans growing. We've got scarlet runner beans already growing up the side here. And there you can see a broccoli going to seed. The bees are really enjoying the broccoli flowers. Now underneath the shade cloth here, I'm pretty excited about this, are some tomatoes. So let me show you. So the tomato here that's growing up over the cattle panel trellis is the Marigold tomato from the Spring Garden Seed Collection. And would you look at this? We've got a couple of green tomatoes. Super exciting. This tomato plant actually overwintered. It grew over the winter time. And I'm just weaving the tomato branches up through the cattle panel trellis. And you can see I definitely do have some heat damage here, but I still have a lot of flowers. And I'm really excited. I think this will be my first full-size ripe tomato of the season. So it is an experiment for me to trellis the tomatoes on this cattle panel. But you guys know I always like to say, experiment, try new things in the garden, and see what works for you. Now I want to take the shade cloth off here just so you can get a good look at this trellis. If you're looking for a relatively inexpensive but large trellis, cattle panels are definitely the way to go. This is 2 cattle panels put together, but right now it's going to be scarlet runner beans, tomatoes. But the scarlet runner beans, if you're looking for a beautiful ornamental plant that's also edible, it's going to grow 8 to 10 feet tall up and over the trellis. The red flowers attract the pollinator, and the beans are so tasty and beautiful too. And I just noticed the very first scarlet runner bean flowers of the season just starting to open up. Now don't think you have to have a ton of space to grow a tomato. This tomato here is the Golden Jubilee tomato from my tomato seed collection. It is growing in a 20-gallon Smart Pots fabric container. So if you have this much space on a balcony or a deck, you can definitely grow a full-size tomato. Now I have it staked up or supported by a regular sized tomato cage, which probably won't quite be big enough. So probably what I'm going to end up doing is grabbing another one of these tomato cages, turning it upside down with the tongs pointing up, and that'll make a double height tomato cage for my Golden Jubilee tomato, because it is a really large orange beefsteak. If you want to just stake your tomato and you don't want to put it in a cage, a little cheap but easy simple trick is to use old sunflower stalks like I have right here. Now this is a midnight snack tomato. It's an All-America Selections winner. It's a purple tomato. I'm growing it for the very first time this year. It does have a little bit of heat damage on it. The leaves are slightly purple because it's a purple tomato. And I have an old dried up sunflower stalk that I saved from last year that I'm using for a stake. Now in this container here, I have an orange tree. And I did want to show you this because this is one of my very favorite flowers. And this is a sunflower. It's from my sunflower seed collection, and this happens to be a volunteer. Now I was noticing the other day all these holes in the leaves. I thought maybe a grasshopper was out here eating the leaves. Then I watched a little bit longer and some birds actually came and sat on top of this little stem here and started pecking holes in the leaves. So I guess they were just looking for water and the sunflower leaf was providing them some. Now this beautiful purple flower is called a Chinese forget-me-not. These are in my Bring on the Pollinators Cool Season flower collection. Isn't the color absolutely beautiful? I'm going to pull off my sheet/shade cloth here, and you can see these nasturtiums are in hot sun all day long. Now nasturtiums love temperatures of 80 degrees or under, but in 95 to 100 degree temperatures, they just don't hold up. So it kind of makes me sad, but it is part of the life in the garden. It allows me to pull them out and make room for some other warm weather plants. So let me pull off this shade cloth and show you these beautiful calendula. These also grow well in cooler weather, but they're holding up remarkably well to the heat. These are also in my cool season flower collection. I absolutely love them, and these are also edible too, as are nasturtiums. Now I do have several pepper plants in here that grew over the winter time. I pruned them back, and right now they are starting to push out brand new leaves, so that's always exciting. This is a Thai chili pepper that's actually been growing here for about 3 years. And we actually do have some little volunteers coming up. Here the peppers have dropped on the ground over the winter time. Along the edge here are some chives. I've had a lot of questions about chives lately. They're not looking so good now, but they are a cool weather herb. They grow best in temperatures under 75 degrees. So definitely taking a beating from the heat. But the great thing about chives is they're perennials. I can trim these, they'll grow back, and they produce beautiful flowers that the bees love. And I'll show you some in just a minute that are growing very well under a shade tree. Now moving down along here, along the planter, there's some tomatoes that overwintered, taking a little bit of a beating from the heat, but this is one of my favorite ones that is starting to produce, actually probably on the end of its life. This is called the Yellow Patio Choice Tomato, again an All-America Selections winner. Got a lot of tomatoes on it. We've been already harvesting off this plant for a couple of weeks. These are a beautiful container tomato, super delicious and super productive, and they always have a spot in my garden. They're so pretty and so tasty. Now here is a perfect example of a pea plant that's definitely at the end of its life. This plant did not get shaded at all over the past few weeks in the heat wave, and you can see how it's drying up, shriveling up. The peas just aren't looking so great, so this plant is definitely going to be coming out, and I am going to be planting either a giant tomato or a watermelon in this super sturdy cage. So I think I see a few more strawberries under here that are ready to harvest. Wow, there's actually more than a few in here. This one is absolutely perfectly ripe. See how there's no white at the top? It looks nice and juicy, and we're gonna have these in our yogurt berry bowls in the morning. If you've never grown strawberries in strawberry crate towers, it's a great way to grow a lot of strawberries in a little bit of space. The strawberries love the drainage that the towers provide, and it keeps them up off the ground and away from the critters as well. Oh, these are gonna be so tasty. Camera guy's gonna love these in his yogurt berry bowl in the morning. Oh, that looks so tasty. See if we have any more we can pick before the birds or the critters get them. Lots more on the way. There's a lot of flowers in here. And a lot of little tiny green berries too. The nasturtiums have really taken over this garden bed. So what I need to do over the next couple of weeks is get in here, thin some things out. This is a celery tree right now, but it actually is a celery plant, which has bolted. It's going to seed. And believe it or not, this plant started from one tiny celery base that I purchased at the grocery store, rooted, planted out in the garden. It has reseeded year after year and grown all kinds of celery plants all over this area. So go back and watch that video for how to grow celery from grocery store celery. Now, some of you have been asking if I'm still growing in the veggie pod, and yes, I absolutely am. We actually split the large veggie pod apart into two smaller veggie pods, moved one under the shade right here, and this is where I'm growing the chives I was telling you about. These chives were actually split up from the chives that I just showed you that are starting to die out. The great thing about chives is they grow in clumps. You can divide the clumps of chives and then replant them in different spots all over your garden, and they will grow more chives. So you can see where I've been harvesting these right here, then they grow right back. And these are definitely looking a lot better than the other chives because they're in the shade and away from the hot sun. Now, also here in the veggie pod, I have several of the tiny Tim tomato plants. They're a beautiful dwarf tomato that only grows about 2 feet tall. So if you don't have a lot of space, definitely grow a tiny Tim. And those are in my container garden seed collection, which we're going to be relaunching in just a couple of weeks with our container garden series. And also in here, I'm growing a ton of kale. You always want to have those heat tolerant greens. Since kale is a superfood, it's always a good one to have around. Up here along the back of the stone wall, I like to call my holding area for my plants that I'm not quite ready to plant out in the garden. As you can tell, here in Southern California, we're kind of in transition between spring and summer. So it's warm enough to put a lot of my tomato plants out, but I don't yet have room in the garden beds. So I'd like to kind of pot them up in my Cali 5-gallon smart pots until a spot opens up. So here I've got a whole bunch of different varieties of tomatoes, including, of course, my favorite Tiny Tim. Now, what I've been doing to keep these plants hydrated, I do have them hooked up to a drip irrigation system. This one, though, I've been filling up this little bin with water, and that way the tomato plant soaks up all the water, it wicks up through the plant and really keeps it nice and moist. And I did want to show you right behind here some blackberry plants. I trimmed back the blackberries over the winter time just to the sticks. So they were just sticks and no leaves, and now they're starting to leaf out, flower, which means we'll be having blackberries very soon. What a beautiful evening it is in the garden right now. The sun's going down behind me. It's still lovely out here. I hope you enjoyed walking around with me. Comment below, let me know what you're enjoying about your garden right now. Make sure you subscribe. We have lots more videos to come. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next video.